Welcome to Mormon Book Reviews, where an evangelical encounters the restoration. I'm your host, Stephen Pynakker. And, folks, I've been doing this a little over 2 years now. Back in the day, there's this guy named Robert Messick. Actually, at the time, was just known as Robert of Book of Mormon Editions, had a YouTube channel. And he does these 5 to 7 minute segments on various editions of the Book of Mormon. Well, I get a link earlier this week from Brian saying, hey, would you like to have me on to talk about this? So I watched the video, like, oh, hey, it's Brian and that's Robert. I know both these guys. They've both been on my show. So this is a really special edition of the Book of Mormon. But before we get started, just a reminder that this month's book giveaway is The Burning Book. Jason Olson and the co-author James Goldberg. It's a Jewish Mormon memoir. Folks, 36,000 views later and sold a ton of these copies for Jason, getting great feedback. So he sent me, actually, Michael Austin, by Common Consent Press, who is now the newly installed provost of Snow College, sent me this extra copy so that we could give it away. Now, the month of October is almost done. So in the description is my email address. And when you subject heading, put in October book drawing, and give me your name and address in the email. Now, Robert, before we get started about this really fantastic new Book of Mormon edition that you just released on your channel, produced by Brian Stutzman, before we get there, I want to actually get a little update from you about a couple things. One, how is the Book of Mormon census project coming along, which we've had you on to talk about, which is the most important Book of Mormon thing going on, like, period, okay, as far as I'm concerned. And two, you recently gave a talk at Christopher Thomas's, previously Christopher Thomas is no longer the president, but at the Book of Mormon Studies Association. Just give us a quick update on the census project, as well as this talk you gave, and then we're going to bring Brian into this conversation.
Yeah, it's Steve. Thanks so much for having me, and I'm so excited to be with you as always. The census is going really well. Once again, we're trying to archive and digitally document the surviving extant copies of the 1830 through the 1842 first volumes of the Book of Mormon. A couple other honorable mentions, things like that. What's interesting is just real recently we did an update on the batch, and we've got a place in the front saying, oh, what's new, and all of the new or kind of exciting ones. And so I'm going to announce that we published details on Samuel Smith's Book of Mormon, 1830 Book of Mormon. And he was known as Joseph Smith's brother, and he was one of the first missionaries. And so the folklore was that he went out with a satchel of Book of Mormon and actually used one as a pillow as he was his first missionary experiences. And so we actually have his 1830 copy, and it's published. It was just updated to the website yesterday. And so anybody can see that. The other one was interesting as well. It's an 1840 copy of the Book of Mormon, and inside it has a book plate, and it's basically a sticker saying owned by, or this belongs to. And the book plate was, this belongs to Joseph Smith, Nauvoo, Illinois. And the research on that was 1844 in January or early 1844, Joseph Smith ordered these book plates to put into his personal library. And obviously a couple months later, he was martyred. So it was actually also used by Joseph Smith III. Those little stickers were in there. And so we don't know if it's Joseph Smith's copy or if it's Joseph Smith III's, but it's a Joseph Smith family Book of Mormon because of those book plate stickers. So those two are published. And then for your audience only, I'm going to announce as well that in the next couple of weeks or so, we have Frederick G. Williams's 1830 volume. And he was one of the first missionaries to go to the Lamanites in the Western lands. And so he actually has annotated a lot of stuff on the margins around how to missionary work towards the group. And then what's interesting as well is went to Utah State University and saw David Whitmer's personal copy. And not many people know that Utah State University has David Whitmer. So I'm working on that. It takes a little bit of time to kind of get them ready to digitally batch to the website. So those two are actually to come, and you're the first group to know about it. So
awesome. So we're going to have links in the description for your Book of Mormon census project that you're doing. And so tell me, how did it go at BOMSA, Book of Mormon Studies Association?
Yeah, early October was Book of Mormon Studies Association, and I submitted a paper for introducing the census, and I was so honored that they'd allow me to present to them. And actually, I presented at the church library, which is the book archive for the church. And it went really, really well. It was kind of the first time I was publicly announcing at a presentation saying this is what I'm doing. I was super nervous because I'm dealing with librarians of the church library and saying this is what I'm doing and this is what I've done so far. So, throw my hat on the floor saying, I put my hat in the ring. This is kind of what I'm doing. And they were so gracious to be excited about it.
So Robert is doing a 7-year project, all leading up to 1830. We all know what that is, what that anniversary is all about. And the coming forth of the Book of Mormon, the start of the church, and all these wonderful things, all these events, all these 200th anniversaries that we come having. So this is a project you're putting a lot of blood, sweat, and tears in. I think that this website's really important because it highlights a lot of the rare and unique editions of the Book of Mormon. He's trying to build a census of every single known 1830 copy, and of course of some other editions, as well as the Book of Mormon. So I want to wish you Godspeed on this endeavor. And now we bring in Mr. Brian Stutzman into the conversation. Brian, of course, welcome back to the program. We've had you on to talk. First of all, we had you on to talk about your Warsaw history book that we talked about, and then we've had you come on to talk about, of course, the Joseph Smith movie. We've had you come and talk about a lot of different. The Joseph Smith Prophecies book, man. So we've gotten to know you really well. And the cool thing is that we've almost made it like an annual tradition that we see each other at least once a year, because of course you split your time in Florida as well. And you were one of the first, actually, and last time you were here, we actually filmed in this studio that we're talking, and your lovely wife helped with the camera work. Brian Stutzman, welcome back to the program.
Thanks. We'll be back in Florida soon, so maybe we'll get together again. Love your studio, love your channel.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, we're not there. We got some snow here today.
Hey, by the way, Brian, you are in Idaho, and I want to show you this. I am wearing a BYU t-shirt. I think somebody from BYU Idaho, maybe you, needs to send me a t-shirt that I could plug BYU Idaho as well. I'm just throwing that in there.
I'll bring you some. So awesome. Me and my wife have the privilege of serving in Rexburg on Sundays, and so we get a great ward. So I always say, Steve, the church has a university in Provo, and the Lord has a university in Rexburg. There's a little bit of rivalry between the two schools. So, so coming up next in January, come follow me. The gospel doctrine lesson, come follow me for the year, is the Book of Mormon. Okay. And right now we're finishing the New Testament. And so I had this idea for a long time, Steve, probably maybe even since my mission, to outline the Book of Mormon. And so years ago, probably 15, I spent a year, and it was like reading notes, like you were in college, you would outline like a book for a particular course, right? So I did that for the Book of Mormon. Just basically, actually, I did it for all 4 of the standard works. But I started with the Book of Mormon just for my own personal study. But as I did that, I was just amazed at, we know the main stories, and so I made them a little darker in my notes, and I folded them so they would fit my scriptures, and I could quickly. It was a 6 panel sheet here, and it just helped me find the stories and keep all those scriptures straight. And then I thought, you know what? As I read the Book of Mormon, I'll tell you really what happened. I was serving in a calling, and I was in sacrament meeting. I was up on the stand, and we had a speaker get up, and he read a quote from the Book of Alma in his talk in sacrament meeting, and he says, and I know the guy quite well. I went to high school with him. This was years later, and we were all married and had kids, and he's up there and he's speaking. He says, and Alma said this. And I leaned over to the bishop. I said, that's not Alma. It's in the Book of Alma, but it was somebody else speaking. I thought, wouldn't it be neat if somebody put together a Book of Mormon and you could read it, and it would be color coded all throughout. And as you read it, you could see who's speaking, so you'd never make this mistake again. So you could open up. And I said, maybe we could I was thinking to myself, maybe I could put little footnotes at the bottom with the color coded, and you could see, this is green or this is yellow, and see, oh, it's Alma or it's Ammon or it's Mosiah or it's Mormon. And so it took me about a year, and I put together this book and published it locally. And the printer was just amazed. He'd never seen anything quite like it because it really helps you keep everything straight. The first thing I noticed was why it was called the Book of Mormon, because you can visually see Mormon just telling these stories after stories, interjecting his commentary. And it's just a fascinating way to see this book of scripture. He's like,
Do
okay.
you have a copy, Brian? Why don't you hold up a copy, or Robert?
I'll have Robert.
Yeah, Robert.
I sent you a slide though, Steve. But
yeah, we can do that too. But I just want people to see this. You can see what Brian has done is that he's taken each different voice in the Book of Mormon and color coded. Would that be a correct way of saying it?
Yeah, exactly. And so it took over a year to do that. And I think where it was questionable, I asked some people much more knowledgeable than me. I went with common consensus. Words of Christ are in red, so it's kind of a red letter edition, but it's everybody else is color coded. And so when I ran out of my first locally printed edition, I had the ISBN and everything. I went to Amazon and decided that would be a wider place to distribute this. And they wouldn't let me use the original title, but if we modified the title, it would be put up there. And so that's what happened. So the first run says an author's edition. If you go to Amazon, it's slightly different. The content is exactly the same. This is, a study edition of the Book of Mormon.
And I've got the Amazon link posted here,
there
Brian.
you go. Yeah.
And I mentioned okay, it's paperback $52, but then you explained that the cost of printing this with all the different colors is really the main thing. And actually, you're not making any money off of this scripture. It's no profit here.
Right.
It's just basically you're selling this at cost.
That is right. I didn't feel like it would be right to make a penny off selling the scriptures, but you go there and it's 680 pages. And because every page is full color, that's why Amazon has it up to $52. I wish I could sell it for 30 or 40 or 20 or give it away, but that's what they charge. I make it nothing. And so I did this work for basically myself, and there you go. So you can see like Nephi and the Lord. When it says the Lord, later on in 3rd Nephi, when Jesus comes to America, it's in red because we know exactly who it is. So the Lord could be God the Father, it could be Jesus, it could be divine investiture through an angel. So when it just talks about the Lord, we just put that in gold. But you can see Nephi in blue and Lehi, and it just really, for me, it made the scriptures make a lot more sense. And I had never seen anything like it. I guess Robert told me about one that was kind of underlined a little bit, but nothing highlighted like this. And so it's kind of a labor of love. I've written books on Joseph Smith's prophecies, on the Hancock County, Warsaw, the city of Warsaw, and the Mormon conflict. Those were a lot of fun. This one was for me more spiritual edification.
Yeah, and this is really important for people for their personal study of the scriptures. It also can be useful for scholars who want to break down. It can be used by scholars to actually maybe get a better understanding of the different voices, which I think. So you're it's devotional, but also you're making a good contribution. You're doing good Book of Mormon scholarship as well at the same time. So it's really cool. I actually think this is a really unique thing, and I think this was making
when you see it
so much easier.
So 2 observations. There's about 120 voices in the Book of Mormon. Okay. Different people, and which is just incredible. Why would a farm boy Joseph Smith in backwoods New York, frontier New York, write a book with 120 voices like that, and keep them all straight when they hardly had paper and pen? Second of all, we find that of the writings, about 36% are the voice of Mormon. 36% of the book, if you were to go through and look at all the colors, 36% are Mormon. That's why it's called the Book of Mormon. It's very clear that he assembled and the stories and the records and quoted, inserted, and gave commentary along the way. To me, it was just fascinating. I always knew that it was the Book of Mormon. I always knew he'd put it together, and then the summer I put a little bit at the end. But when you see it by color, it just really just kind of hit me over the head and say, "Wow, now I know why they say that it's the Book of Mormon."
Got it. Hey, Bill. So Robert, you did a video on this, and I'm sure, I'm sure you have a few questions for Brian. So shoot away.
Yeah, and I kind of wanted to interject on it. Is that one that I liked was that you've got, even in like pages, you've got multiple voices and interactions and people speaking and things like that. And so the one that I was referencing was the story of Abinadi, where you have Abinadi teaching to King Noah, and the priest of King Noah talking, and Mormons interjecting, and Abinadi is actually even quoting Isaiah scriptures. And so it was amazing in terms of you had 5 voices on one page. And so it was really interesting that like it takes a long time on that too.
Why would Joseph Smith,
Yeah,
how could he concoct anything like that with limited education, no resources, no internet, no word processors? He just dictated that and keep it all straight. It's just so complex. It's like this onion and just keep peeling layers off. It's just an amazing way to see the Book of Mormon.
So you have a Book of Mormon kind of prophets quoting Isaiah to teach the people and teach a lesson, and they're like, "Well, really?" And the back and forth dialogue regarding that. It was really interesting, kind of seeing. I think for me it was interesting because I always thought, well, Mormon wrote the whole thing, or Mormon abridged the whole thing. But the challenge is you also go into saying, okay, this is Mormon's words, and then when Mormon says, and Helaman said this, and now becomes Helaman's words, and then Helaman's writing an epistle and said, our mothers knew that we could do this, and so it's actually a different voice of a voice while Mormon's speaking. And so you have Royal Skousen mentioned it. If you do quotations in the Book of Mormon, quotations are really hard because you've got people speaking and then they're re-quoting other people, and inside that they're even quoting scripture. So you have triple quotation marks sometimes, and so because of it, it went really well in terms of identifying which color is which voice on that. And then the yellow is Mormon interjecting, saying, okay, let's explain why he's talking this, and then I'll go back to his voice, and oh yeah, this other person said something, and I'll explain it, and I'll continue with the narrative. So color coding it was really interesting to see, because you can see who's talking and why, and then also give some understanding that you're right. The Book of Alma has so many voices, and the Book of Mosiah has a lot of voices, because it's not just Mosiah or Alma, it's the time frame of Alma and the time frame of Mosiah. So the one question I had, how long did it take you to actually color code the full volume of the Book of Mormon? And tell me about like your process on that.
Oh, thanks, Robert. This is the first time we actually really talked. We emailed a little bit when I sent you the original for you. It took me over a year, and I just delved into it. And I thought, oh, this is going to be easy. There's probably 5, 10, 15 voices, right? How many books are in there? 15 or so, whatever. I thought this would be really easy. And then I got bogged down. And thankfully, the type of work I do, I'm just kind of, on call a little bit. And so I could work a couple hours here and a couple hours there, sometimes 8, 10 hours in a day. And it just plowed through it. And used some different coloring editing software that I'd rather not tell all my secrets, but it was harder. I joke with my friends. I said, look, you can get a free copy of this. You don't have to buy my copy. Just get a free Book of Mormon from the missionaries and get a pencil set. You'll need 120 different colors. And as you read through it, you can color it yourself. It'll take you over a year. You don't have to spend the money. Get a free copy, do it yourself. But 120 voices, yeah.
Which is funny because, okay, and I'm going to give you a kudos. One of the stories is in the very beginning, Nephi is getting kind of beat up by his brothers and kind of getting roused by his brothers. And an angel comes and says, why are you beating up your brothers? You know, don't you know that we can do this, or that he's got an ability? And so the voice is an angel, and it's a green. And what's interesting is you have the same angelic color when Alma the Younger is being rebellious, and he has the vision and says, you know, hey, stop rebelling against your family, and or else you're going to be destroyed. And he kind of falls and faints and things like that. And what's interesting is, yeah, there's an angel voice, there's the Spirit, there's the Lord. Actually, there's two references of actually God the Father speaking, saying, this is my beloved Son, in Third Nephi. It was interesting. God the Father's voice is actually not much in there. It's actually the Lord. And so I think it was kind of interesting that you separated the Spirit versus an angel versus the Lord himself as well. So
yeah, and doctrinally, I believe that was correct. If I've made an error, I made this book for myself.
Yeah,
I will, you know, I can update it, but that's the way I did it, and that's the way I understood it. Again, I talked to some religion professors that I know when things got, and one of them I remember, a guy named Bruce Satterfield. I asked him about one particular one of these quotes, the Lord, you know, this other thing, and he says, well, that's up to debate. He says, we really don't know what this particular, I can't remember exactly what passage, so I just went with what I felt was correct on one of those dealing with divinity.
yeah. You had said the red letters is actually words of Jesus specifically, and you kind of identified that one as specific. Were there any other specific colors, or like did you kind of earmark a couple of colors that you liked for somebody?
Yeah, I did. Mormon, I knew that he had a lot to say in this book. I didn't realize it was a full 36%. So I tried to make that a lighter. It's yellow, which is easier to read through. So I started running out of the palette. You know, there's only so many colors that are distinct enough, especially when you use them close together. And I had to go dark on some. And I knew that it was, there's a few that are really less used that are a little darker, and sometimes they're a little harder to read the black print through. But I was running out of colors, so I decided to keep the ones that are most commonly used. I wanted the words of Christ in red. There are some editions, as you know, of the Book of Mormon with the words of Christ in red. When I was a kid, we had some Bible salesman come by, and we bought a Bible, non-LDS, and it was red letter. And I always liked the red letter editions of the Bible with words of Christ in red ever since I was in second grade when we got that. So I wanted my Book of Mormon edition to have that. And then, of course, like I said, most common, like Mormon, being really easy to read in yellow. So there's you don't have to strain at all.
Yeah, Nephi was a light blue as well, and I thought that was a good visual as well. So
I wanted to ask you, Brian, what edition of the Book of Mormon are you using? And maybe just talk about like the legalities of using a particular edition and stuff like that.
Yeah. So there are a lot of, as Robert Welch documents on his channel, a lot of editions of the Book of Mormon, as well as just year. Well, I did some research before I started, and in the public domain, I believe it was anything past or earlier than 1924 was kind of open public domain. So I used the 1920 edition of the Book of Mormon just to get totally.
We know all about that one, Robert.
Yeah, 1920 was kind of the benchmark. So good.
So you got a good edition you could work with, and then so that's the one that you used because it's within public domain. And so the versification, of course, will be the standard versification of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, which also the Bickertonites use the same versification for their Book of Mormon as well. And then, so that's how you're able to do it. Now, you say it took a year, and I'm just trying to think here. Were you? I mean, so you're actually not literally using markers on a actual page of the Book of Mormon. You're actually using this software, and you're color coding it that way. And so you said it took you a year. Like how many hours do you think you spent on this?
I don't know. I don't know. I couldn't even estimate, but it was quite a while because the kids would come home from school and I'd take a break and spend time. So I do it sometimes like you and maybe even Robert, I know we were messaging in the middle of the night. That's, I get up for 3 or 4 hours in the middle of the night when the house is quiet. We're empty nesters now, but, blocks of time here and there. And there's only so much you can do before you kind of get, you need a break. But I would use a program that we would color code, and it would have on the palette, it would have a color mixture. And so I had this big notebook of, 43% indigo, 45% this color, and, whatever for each voice. And so when I made the table of contents or the little key up front, it would match what's at the bottom. And then as I changed from page to page to page and different people would come and go, I would make sure I get the exact color palette based on this. Yeah, so Robert's showing up front kind of a key, the different things. So it was a little more intense than just get out your markers and just go into town. I did this for me. I thought, well, somebody else might, be interested in studying the Book of Mormon this way. So I'm going to try to do a really good job. But I'm a businessman by trade and a Hancock County researcher by hobby, and a landlord, and spent a lot of time in church leadership right now. And so I put this together as scholarly as I could, but I'm not a Book of Mormon scholar per se. But I would match this against probably any work out there. I think it's accurate. We've got when I first published it, I had some people in my ward go through and say, oh, you've got this error here and there. I had like 6 errors. We corrected it real quick, and I think what we've got is a pretty good product that will stand on its own, against scrutiny as far as quality and accuracy. I think it's there.
Was there a story that, not say trumped you, but was there a story that slowed you down, or kind of you had to juggle a little bit more than normal?
Oh, not that I recall specifically, but as you pointed out, there were some spots where there's 5-6 people voices on the same page. Those definitely slowed me down, because you got to make sure you got the right colors or the right person. And I got my copy here. Yeah, sometimes there's only 2 or 3 people, but yeah, when you get to 5-6 people on the same page and they're going back and forth and they're quoting like you were mentioning, gosh, it just becomes really, really cool.
Yeah.
It becomes cool to see how Mormon did this for us. The work he did the work. I just kind of went through, and I can imagine how many years it took him to put this together.
Yeah, and you kind of, let's say we're bold enough, but you certainly put your line in the sand when, like, Nephi, in Nephi's words, he's doing his prophecy around how the book is going to be coming forth in the latter days, and the Martin Harris story of, they're going to go to a learned man, and the learned man's going to say, I can't do this, and but the person is saying, well, I'm not learned, and I'll do it, and and the Lord kind of compliments the unlearned man from bringing this forth. And you actually quote, or you highlight or color Martin Harris, Joseph Smith, and Professor Anton in this prophecy. And so, yep, certainly that's what we've got there.
Oh, that's cool.
I'm seeing it right here. Yeah,
that's fascinating. Robert, do you have some more questions?
Yeah, the other one was it the Book of Omni, where it's the small plates of Nephi, and they're getting close to the Book of Mosiah, and there's writers that only do like a couple of lines, and I'm going to pass it to my son, and then pass it to my son, and there was 5 colors on that one, because he's like, I'm running out of room, and I'm giving it to my son because I'm on my deathbed, so here you go. And so I was really visually, it works, because you can actually kind of see a transition of color is a transition of voice, is a transition of story that you kind of pass the baton to somebody else. And so I wanted to kind of interject that was a fun one to see, because it visually works as well. So
and for me, I saw it in a way, I've read the Book of Mormon how many times, a number of times, and you just kind of You see this thing coming. Oh man, okay, these are real people, and they're handing this down. You're right. It really brought the book alive for me. And I think
Currently, you did retitle this for Amazon. How was the Amazon? Can you tell us more about the Amazon subscription, as well as now it's available for Amazon?
some trade secrets, but we went back and forth with them. There's certain titles that they would accept and certain titles that they wouldn't. And this is what we decided on that they would do. When they first started it, they wanted $80 for it, even with zero profit for me. And then they brought it down. I don't know if they've got a new printing system that is cheaper, but it's over 600 pages, full color, and that's why they charge so much. So it was a negotiation on a title that would work. It's the same content as my first run. It's called an author's edition. Amazon didn't like it, but they liked this one, the study edition.
Okay, so just to make sure that we're still talking about the same edition, even though Robert's edition is a different title, this is what you saw on Amazon is what is the correct one that we want to make sure.
The content is exactly the same.
Okay.
It's just that they wanted certain, and I don't know if it was for legal standpoint or just that's what they wanted. And,
Yeah.
We do it through Amazon, so so I don't have a stack of books here, and I'm not taking money, and I'm not, shipping. They do it all. They print it, they ship it.
It's all there. It's all there for you. So that's really interesting. So yeah, so I can see how and why. And actually, $52 actually sounds to me now like a bargain for considering all the ink and all that stuff that'll be in there. So really, this is kind of it's a little bit pricier, but I think it's worth it, especially for those of you who want to study the Book of Mormon. And Brian, I just want to know, what about this? Have you had good positive responses from people? Has this helped people's maybe better appreciate the Book of Mormon and also maybe help build up their testimony?
Yeah, I believe so. Now, this kind of set here, I had it published in 2020. Okay. And that was right every 4 years, as most of your viewers know, we go through the different books of scripture. And so 2020, it was just the start of the first Come Follow Me, and it was the Book of Mormon. And we're coming up on it again. So I had this out self-published right at the end of 2019. I gave it to a couple of people who were teaching Come Follow Me. We used to call it gospel doctrine, and they held it up in their lesson. And I joked with some people in my ward at the time. I said, the Book of Mormon is so flexible, you can make your own edition. And I did mine. When are you guys going to do yours? So, but yeah, the people that I know that have bought it, it has really helped them. I had a friend teaching up in Rexburg, and my teacher there where we lived when this was published. Both of them used it in their lessons. We were talking about different ways to study the Book of Mormon. We said how you could highlight, color code the disputes.
Oh,
again,
I'm sorry.
I was going to say, Stephen, you probably interviewed a bunch of people that says, when you do a project like that, the project organizer gains as much insight as the recipients as well. And so, kudos to you on Labor of Love. That what now to go kind of spiritual, what have you learned as you went through this, or kind of like what insights did you kind of more appreciate after the fact regarding this volume or regarding, your process?
Well, I'm a big fan of the prophet Joseph Smith. And my latest book was dealing with hundreds of his prophecies fulfilled. That's when I was in Florida with, there you are, with Steve. We talked about that last time, that book. And this is just another brick in the testimony, the spiritual foundation of a testimony of the restoration. I could see God's hand all over this book, okay? Both in the writing of it and in the translation of it in our day and the publication of it. It's just beyond human. Divine intervention so many steps of the way is what I got out of it, is what I saw, what I observed, what I felt from the earliest writings. It just, all these other theories that it was just fiction or a parable. Are you kidding? When you see the Book of Mormon like I saw it, any other explanation except the way it's been told by official church narrative, by the prophet Joseph Smith, any other explanation just falls flat on its face. This is a remarkable book, and it's the foundation of our testimony, and I see why now.
Oh, okay. Well, this is the other thing too, folks. Remember, next year, 2024, is Come Follow Me. I'm going to be doing a year-long study of the Book of Mormon. This will, I think, will make a great study guide, a help for you to help go through the Book of Mormon. I think this would be just add another level to this whole thing. It sounds very exciting. It's hard to believe it's been 4 years since the last time, because it was my introduction. Really, I got to know Rod Meldrum and Jonathan Neville and all those people when they were doing their Come Follow Me series. That's been almost 4 years now. That I can't believe it. And that was right before I started my channel. And that's when I got to know Jonathan Neville. And of course, the relationship I have with Jonathan and my channel has been like this almost since the beginning. The same thing with Robert. And so, yeah, next year is your time to study the Book of Mormon. And just so you know, right before I was taping this, I was talking to a pastor who was of an Assemblies of God church for 37 years, just retired a couple of years ago, in a very historic, important Pentecostal church that was there from the early days of the Pentecostal revivals. And he's based in Texas. And he and I talked about the Book of Mormon. And I talked about Pentecostal reads the Book of Mormon by my friend Dr. Christopher Thomas. And I just told him, and because he watched me on Mormon Stories, right? And he said, Steve, you talked about all the stuff that was going on in the early days of that church. It reminded me of our movement. I said, I know. And I said, not only that, but there's fully formed Pentecostal doctrine in the Book of Mormon that it predates it. I said, I don't know what to do with that, but he and I had a wonderful conversation about maybe realizing the Book of Mormon actually is that one place, especially that evangelicals, but more particularly Pentecostals and charismatics, can have a conversation with the restoration. And so I think that's the beauty. That's why I consider the Book of Mormon a gift to everyone.
Steve, you may not like this, but the answer to your question, what do you do with it, is you believe it.
Well, hey, spoken like a true TBM. I like that. That's
yeah,
that's great. That's why I appreciate you, Brian. You've always been, this is my church. It's the true church. I believe it. And I'm like, I respect you, man. You bring your convictions to the table. I'll bring mine, and we can break bread together and have conversations with each other. Robert, I want to thank you so much, Robert, for being my co-host. Was there anything else you wanted to add to this before we wrap this up?
No, kudos. And here's a couple things, anytime you do a project on the volume of the Book of Mormon, everyone kind of does, well, first and second Nephi, and then you peter out. And the real test is getting past that and actually finishing the whole volume, whether it be like a graphical novel, or, graphical comic book series, or, annotations, or, commentaries. And so for, a color-coded Book of Mormon for a full volume, and then to go publish it and have it available, for readers, is kind of a huge step. So, that by itself is significant enough to say that there's some validity to that project and to the volume. Obviously, Steve, you and I were passionate about it, and my wife wishes that I could get paid for my hobbies, and I don't. So there's no incentive for me to push it, and it's kind of just been real fun. Brian, kind of seeing this book and interacting, and once again, kudos to you on the project that you did.
Okay, well, folks, you tell us what you think. Why don't you? We're going to have links in the description here to get the book on Amazon. It looks to me, just the sheer volume of work, and also just the quality. I could tell, I don't have an actual copy, but it looks like there's a high quality publication for you to. Well, it's definitely worth. Maybe make it a Christmas gift this year before Come Follow Me starts. You could give it out as a Christmas gift. I think for those of you who love the Book of Mormon, you're going to love this edition. And let's honor Brian Stutzman for the time that he put into this. We do appreciate it. And like Robert likes to say, kudos to you. Kudos, Brian Stutzman. Thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having us. Thanks, Robert. Thanks, Steve.
Okay. We're gonna have links there. I want to hear your in the description, or actually in the comments. I would like to hear from you. What do you think? Do you think this is a Book of Mormon that might be helpful to you? What are there Book of Mormon editions that have been helpful for you in your study? Maybe share that with the audience as well. Always like to have good conversations. Whenever we talk about the Book of Mormon, folks, I love it. I had great conversations, and often when we talk about the Book of Mormon, Robert is there by my side. Folks,
Thank
for those of
you.
you who have been by my side, who financially support the channel, I want to thank you. There are links in the description for Venmo, PayPal, as well as Patreon for those who'd like to financially support me. And I do want to thank everybody for your support. I really couldn't do it without you. Just a reminder, we do also have the merch store where you can get hot chocolate mugs, hats, and whatever you want at mormonbookreviews.com. Haven't been selling a whole lot of stuff there lately. We don't know for how much longer we're going to keep it, but please, if you've been thinking about purchasing something, please do, because we do, it does help our channel as well. And it's really cool merch. So either way, but really, folks, these are two cool human beings. I'm glad they came on the program today. And remember, this is the most important thing, though, is this, folks. Remember, all the voices of the restoration will be heard here on Mormon Book Reviews.